We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Seneca. Self-doubt is something each and every one of us face at some point. It can hold us back, keep us stuck, and make us second-guess our abilities. But the Stoics, philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, developed a mindset that helped them navigate uncertainty with clarity and confidence. Here are 5 Stoic rules that can help you overcome self-doubt and take control of your thoughts. Let's begin. Rule number 1. Focus on what you can control. One of the biggest causes of self-doubt is worrying about things we can't control. What others think of us, whether we'll succeed, or how the future will unfold. The Stoics believe that this kind of thinking is not only unproductive, but also a direct cause of suffering. Epictetus, one of the most well-known Stoic philosophers, made a simple but profound observation. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. At first glance, this may seem obvious, but if you really reflect on it, most of our fears, anxieties, and doubts stem from trying to control things that are simply out of our hands. Think about the last time you doubted yourself. Maybe you hesitated to apply for a job because you weren't sure if you'd get it. Maybe you held back from speaking up in a meeting because you feared judgment. Or maybe you didn't start a project because you were afraid of failing. What do all of these situations have in common? They involve an attachment to external outcomes, the result of the job application, the reaction of others, or the success of the project. The problem is that when you focus on things outside of your control, you become passive. You wait for external validation, you hesitate, and you let doubt dictate your actions. The Stoics teach us that the way out of this mental trap is to shift our focus inward. Instead of worrying about whether you'll get the job, focus on preparing the best application possible. Instead of fearing judgment, focus on making a thoughtful contribution to the conversation. Instead of worrying about success or failure, focus on the effort you put in. The outcome is never fully in your control, but your actions and mindset always are. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, reinforced this idea in his private journal, Meditations. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This is a radical shift in thinking. The moment you internalize this principle, self-doubt begins to lose its grip on you. When you stop fixating on how others will perceive you and start focusing on what you can control, your preparation, your effort, your response to challenges, you take back your personal power. You become less concerned with how things might turn out and more concerned with how you choose to show up. Let's take an example. Imagine you're about to give a speech. If you're stuck in the mindset of self-doubt, you'll worry about things like, what if I mess up? What if people don't like it? What if I forget my words? But none of those things are fully in your control. No matter how much you prepare, you can't control how others react or whether you'll forget a line. However, what is in your control? You can practice. You can structure your speech clearly. You can focus on speaking slowly and delivering your message with confidence. The more you direct your energy toward these controllable actions, the less space you leave for doubt. This principle applies to everything in life. In relationships, you can't control how others feel about you, but you can control how you treat them. In your career, you can't guarantee a promotion, but you can control the quality of your work. In creative pursuits, you can't control whether people will like what you create, but you can control how much effort you put in. The Stoics weren't suggesting that we ignore the world around us or pretend that external factors don't matter. Instead, they taught that your energy is best spent on things within your influence. The more you train yourself to think this way, the less self-doubt will control your decisions. Instead of being paralyzed by uncertainty, you'll develop a mindset of action, clarity, and resilience. So the next time you feel self-doubt creeping in, ask yourself, am I focusing on something I can control, or am I fixating on something outside my power? If it's the latter, redirect your energy, because when you take ownership of what you can control, you take ownership of your life. Rule number 2, embrace discomfort and challenges. Self-doubt often comes from the fear of failure, the fear of looking foolish, or the fear of struggling. We tell ourselves that if something feels difficult, it must mean we're not capable. But the Stoics saw this kind of thinking as a trap. They believed that discomfort, struggle, and even failure were not things to be feared. They were necessary for growth. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." Just as your muscles grow stronger when you lift heavier weights, your mind grows stronger when it faces and overcomes challenges. Imagine if a person wanted to get physically stronger but refused to lift anything heavy. They would remain weak, not because they were incapable of strength, but because they avoided the very thing that would make them stronger. The same applies to mental strength and self-confidence. The only way to truly overcome self-doubt is to face difficult situations head-on, proving to yourself through action that you are more capable than your doubts suggest. Most of the time, our doubts come from overestimating the risks and underestimating our ability to adapt. We think, what if I fail? What if I embarrass myself? What if I'm not good enough? But a Stoic would ask a different set of questions. What can I learn from this? Even if I fail, will it really be the end of the world? Haven't I overcome challenges before? When you shift your mindset from avoidance to engagement, difficulties stop feeling like threats and start feeling like opportunities. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that obstacles are not interruptions to our path, they are the path. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This means that every challenge, every setback, and every moment of doubt is not something to escape, but something to embrace. Your confidence is not built by avoiding difficult things, but by facing them, struggling through them, and coming out on the other side stronger. Think back to any time in your life when you faced something that initially felt impossible. Maybe it was learning a new skill, speaking in front of a crowd, or making a tough decision. At first, you might have felt uncertain, but by going through it, you proved to yourself that you could handle it. Each time you do this, self-doubt weakens and self-trust grows. The Stoics knew that discomfort is a sign of growth, not failure. Instead of running from it, they leaned into it, and that is exactly what you must do to overcome self-doubt. The problem is that most people wait until they feel confident before taking action. They believe they need to eliminate all fear and hesitation first. But the truth is, confidence doesn't come before action. It comes from action. If you wait until you feel ready, you may never act at all. The Stoics would say that hesitation is just the mind creating unnecessary barriers. Instead of waiting for a perfect moment, they believed in moving forward regardless of how they felt. Epictetus taught that we should train ourselves to be comfortable with discomfort. He advised his students to put themselves in situations where they would face resistance. For example, he encouraged practicing voluntary hardship, sleeping on the floor instead of a bed, wearing simple clothes, or fasting for a day. Why? Because when you intentionally experience small difficulties, you train your mind to handle bigger ones without fear. You start to see that discomfort is not something to avoid, but something to endure and eventually master. Imagine two people, one who avoids all difficult situations and another who constantly pushes themselves into discomfort. The first person remains stuck, full of doubt, afraid of failure. The second person, even if they struggle at first, develops resilience and self-trust over time. The difference isn't in their natural abilities, it's in their willingness to face discomfort. The Stoic approach is simple. Instead of fearing difficulty, seek it out. Not recklessly, but deliberately. Push yourself to do things that challenge you, whether it's speaking up in a meeting, taking on a new responsibility, or stepping outside your comfort zone in any way. With each experience, you'll realize that discomfort is temporary, but the confidence and strength you gain will last. Rule number 3, stop seeking validation. A major source of self-doubt is the constant need for validation from others. We hesitate to take action because we wonder, what will they think? What if they don't approve? This fear of judgment keeps us trapped in our own minds, constantly second-guessing ourselves instead of moving forward. But the Stoics understood that chasing external validation is a losing game, because no matter what you do, you will never have full control over how others perceive you. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly when he wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own." Think about that for a moment. You spend every second of your life with yourself. You know your thoughts, your struggles, your dreams. Yet when it comes to making decisions, you hesitate because of what someone else, a person who likely spends very little time thinking about you, might say or think. Does that make sense? The truth is, most people are too preoccupied with their own concerns to analyze your every move. Everyone is the main character in their own story, and while you might feel like others are watching and judging you, they are often too busy thinking about themselves. The moments you agonize over, an awkward interaction, a mistake, a moment of embarrassment, are usually forgotten by others within minutes. And even if someone does judge you, what does their opinion really mean? People's perceptions are shaped by their personal biases, experiences, and emotions, factors that have nothing to do with your true worth. This is why seeking validation is a bottomless pit. Even if you gain someone's approval today, what happens tomorrow? What if their mood changes? What if they find a new standard to judge you by? When your confidence is built on the shifting sands of public opinion, self-doubt is inevitable. The more you rely on external validation, the more fragile your sense of self becomes. You'll start filtering your words, your actions, even your dreams, through the lens of how others might react. In the end, you're not really living your life. You're living the life you think will earn the most approval. The Stoics offer a different path. Instead of seeking validation, seek self-respect. Ask yourself, am I acting according to my values? Am I doing what I believe is right? If the answer is yes, then external opinions become irrelevant. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You can't control how others see you, but you can control your actions, your intentions, and your principles. This doesn't mean ignoring all feedback or rejecting criticism. The Stoics valued wisdom, and part of wisdom is learning from others. But there's a difference between accepting constructive advice and living for approval. One helps you grow, the other keeps you enslaved to the ever-changing opinions of others. Seneca once wrote, "The approval of others matters only if you approve of yourself first." If you live in a way that earns your own respect, self-doubt starts to fade. The ultimate test is this: if no one was watching, if no one was there to give you approval or applause, would you still be proud of the person you are? If the answer is yes, then you are free. If the answer is no, then you're not doubting yourself. You're doubting whether you're living authentically. The answer to self-doubt isn't external validation. It's aligning your actions with your true values, regardless of who is watching. Rule number 4. Reframe negative thoughts. Your mind is the battlefield of self-doubt. The Stoics understood that the way you interpret a situation determines how you feel about it. Epictetus famously said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of them." In other words, events themselves are neutral. They have no power over you until you decide how to think about them. Think about how often self-doubt creeps in because of the way you frame a situation. You make a mistake at work, and instead of seeing it as a simple error, you immediately label yourself as incompetent. You don't get the response you hoped for in a conversation, and suddenly you convince yourself that people don't respect you. You feel nervous about a new opportunity, and your mind turns it into evidence that you aren't capable. But in every single one of these situations, the event itself is not the problem. The problem is the way you interpret it. The Stoics believe that you could train your mind to reshape these interpretations. Imagine you're about to give an important presentation and you feel nervous. Your instinctive response might be, "I'm nervous because I'm not prepared. Maybe I'm not good enough to do this." But a Stoic approach would challenge that. You could reframe that nervousness as, "I feel this way because I care about doing well. This energy is a sign that I'm stepping outside my comfort zone and growing." The situation hasn't changed, but your interpretation has, and that makes all the difference. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most disciplined Stoics, constantly reminded himself that his perception determined his reality. In Meditations, he wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it, and it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now." That last part is key. It is in your power to wipe out that judgment now. The power to control your perspective is immediate. You don't need to wait until you feel more confident, more successful, or more experienced. You can start right now by challenging your negative thoughts. When you hear that voice in your head saying, "I'm not smart enough for this," pause and ask yourself, is this actually true? What proof do I have? Have I never learned anything difficult before? If I've succeeded in similar situations in the past, why should this be any different? Most of the time, self-doubt is built on weak arguments that crumble under scrutiny. Another powerful Stoic technique is viewing your situation from a greater perspective. Imagine that your problem isn't happening to you, but to a friend. If they came to you full of doubt saying, "I don't think I can do this," what would you tell them? Would you confirm their fears, or would you remind them of their strengths, their past successes, and the fact that growth always comes with discomfort? Most of us give far wiser advice to others than we do to ourselves, so why not treat yourself with the same level of understanding? Reframing also means realizing that setbacks and failures are not final judgments on your ability, but lessons in progress. Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher, compared life's struggles to training in a gym. He said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." A person lifting weights does not see resistance as a sign that they are weak. They see it as a necessary challenge for growth. In the same way, every obstacle you face is proof that you are stretching beyond your limits and improving. This practice is not about blind optimism or pretending difficulties don't exist. It's about choosing the most useful and empowering perspective. Self-doubt thrives in a mind that assumes the worst. But when you take control of your interpretations, you take control of your confidence. You may not always be able to stop self-doubt from appearing, but you can choose not to believe it. And that is the key to mastering your thoughts. Rule number 5, take action, even when you doubt yourself. One of the central ideas that Stoic philosophers repeatedly emphasized is the power of action. It's easy to fall into the trap of waiting for the right moment, for everything to feel perfect, or for the self-doubt to subside before you take the next step. But the Stoics understood that doubt only grows in the absence of action. The reality is that self-doubt is a natural part of being human, and it will never disappear entirely. No matter how much experience you gain, how many accolades you collect, or how many times you succeed, doubt will still try to creep in from time to time. It can be paralyzing if you let it control you. This is where the Stoics provide profound wisdom. Rather than trying to eliminate doubt, they suggest that you move despite it, acting even when you feel uncertain, unprepared, or fearful. Marcus Aurelius, in his personal writings, offers a powerful reminder. Don't waste time debating what a good man should be. Be one. This straightforward approach cuts through the mental noise. Instead of overthinking or waiting for your internal obstacles to disappear, you simply act. You become the person you aim to be through your actions. And each action, no matter how small, chips away at the power doubt has over you. Taking action, even imperfectly, is one of the most powerful tools in overcoming self-doubt. Often, the hardest part isn't the task itself, but the mental resistance we build up before we even start. Self-doubt whispers in your ear, telling you that you're not ready, not good enough, or that you'll fail. But the truth is, these doubts are usually based on fear, not reality. They're exaggerated scenarios that our minds create, and when you take the first step forward, you begin to break down those false narratives. In practical terms, what does this mean? Let's say you have an idea for a new project, a career move, or a personal goal. You feel overwhelmed by the weight of self-doubt. What if it fails? What if people judge me? What if I'm not qualified? These thoughts can easily paralyze you and keep you from moving forward. But instead of allowing yourself to get lost in these questions, the Stoic approach would be to take the first step, however small it may be. You don't need to know every detail or have everything figured out. The Stoics weren't concerned with perfection. They were focused on progress. Seneca said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." The difficulty, then, isn't in the challenge itself, but in the mental block we put up by not acting. Every time you hesitate, the task becomes more daunting in your mind. But once you start, once you take action, you realize that your fears were based on uncertainty, not facts. You're now in motion, and that's where growth happens. The Stoic principle here is not about waiting for the right feeling or waiting for confidence to magically appear. Confidence is built through action. The more you do, the more you prove to yourself that you're capable. It's like learning how to swim. You can read all the books on swimming or watch videos, but until you get into the water and start practicing, you'll never know what it feels like. Doubt will always exist, but the more you act in the face of it, the less control it has over you. Taking action also forces you to confront your fears and doubts head-on. When you're standing at the edge of a leap, it's easy to imagine the worst-case scenario. But once you take that step, whether it's making a phone call, sending an email, launching that first piece of work, or showing up at the event, you see that the reality is often far less terrifying than the mental stories you told yourself. Each small step forward builds momentum. And here's where the Stoic idea of virtue comes into play. For the Stoics, virtue is the only true good, and virtue is defined by living in accordance with reason and nature. Reason tells you that self-doubt is not based on any rational fact. It's a fear response, and it can be overcome. By taking action, you are aligning with your better self, the person who faces challenges head-on, not one who shrinks away from them. Every time you act in spite of doubt, you are practicing virtue. You are becoming the version of yourself that can handle whatever comes next. Remember, no one is ever 100% certain when they start something new. That's a myth. Every successful person has had to act while feeling uncertain. The difference is, they didn't let that doubt paralyze them. Instead of waiting for perfect confidence, they took action. And with each step forward, the doubt became smaller and less significant. So, the next time you find yourself hesitating or feeling uncertain, remind yourself of the Stoic approach. Take action anyway. It doesn't have to be perfect and it doesn't have to be grand. Just start and keep moving. With each step, you'll build confidence. The more action you take, the less self-doubt will have a hold on you, and the more you will learn about your true potential. Doubt won't disappear entirely, and that's okay. But you'll see that doubt isn't something to fear, it's simply part of the process. As you act, you prove to yourself that you are capable, that you can handle the challenges that come your way, and that you don't need to wait for perfection to begin. Courage isn't the absence of doubt, it's taking the next step despite it. Self-doubt doesn't go away overnight, but these Stoic principles will help you manage it. Focus on what you can control. Embrace challenges. Stop seeking validation. Reframe negative thoughts. Take action despite doubt. Which one of these Stoic rules resonated with you the most? Let me know in the comments. Now watch this video on 5 rules to self-mastery and discovering the keys to achieving anything you may desire. And if you found this helpful, consider liking and subscribing for more Stoic wisdom. Thanks for watching, and remember to be Stoic, always.